Almost 30 people here, so it's great that everybody could make it today. Let me organize my notes quickly, and as you guys continue to share, I'm going to go ahead and open up our agenda for today. So we are in the middle of agenda review. We're going to have a few updates that I'll share with you. Then we're going to have a discussion that I've talked to a few of you about offline or at conference around the specific benefits of conference attendance for chairs of virtual committees. And we'll be hearing also then from the co-chairs of our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion within ALSC Implementation Task Force. There's a nice typo in my agenda. It's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, not inclusivity. And we'll have some time at the end, I hope, for closing questions and any announcements that chairs want to share. So before I head into updates, I'll just welcome the people who are continuing to come into the room. You want to go ahead and make sure your chat box is open and introduce yourself quickly in the chat box so we can all see who's here. That would be great. And for my updates here, I'm going to move to share my different screen here so I can show you guys what is up with ALA Connect. ALA Connect is in gray out right now. You'll notice you can't post any new content or log into Connect, but it has all the content there. That content is being shifted. Lost my chat box here, but if you go to, I'm going to screen share just so you guys can see the link that I wanted to post into chat, which I can't. ala.org/support/ALA Connect brings you to this screen at ALA Support, which just has some updates, some FAQs on Connect. And if you go to the how-to resources for ALA Connect, you'll get a link for lists of dates and times for training if you're interested in doing a member training for ALA Connect. There's a simple form with some upcoming training date options for member participants. Connect is scheduled to go live on April 25th. Is that correct, Elizabeth? Yeah, I see Elizabeth nodding. So stay tuned for the new and improved ALA Connect. And those FAQs have a lot of information about what's coming up. I wanted to give you some updates on a new page on the ALSC website for all of you. The committee page that you've probably visited many times, that comes up under About ALSC, under Committees, has always had at the bottom here a section of resources that you have to scroll way down for. Those are still here, although we are it will be going away from this page, and the staff have created a whole separate page for committee resources right here. If you look in the left-hand navigation under committees, so you have the forms page that has always been there, and then the resources page just has those resources better organized and easier to see. This is where you have your best practices for virtual committees, your division leadership manual, a link to your forms, all kinds of good information for you here, as well as recordings of our last online meetings. So thank you, ALA staff, for organizing that section for us. And a reminder that on Thursday, we are having an ALSC community forum on doing ALA differently. This is a conversation that is going on at the ALA level to improve organizational effectiveness throughout ALA. We wanted to have that conversation within ALSC membership so that we can get a scan of where we are and also bring some of those ideas to the bigger ALA table. Some of that may bubble up for us here today. So I would really encourage all of you, if you can, to join us on Thursday at 3 p.m. Central for the ALSC Community Forum. So now let me move back to the PowerPoint. There were the updates that I just gave you. And for a few more of you who have just walked in, we're going to go ahead and get into the nuts and bolts of our meeting today. I want to welcome everybody. There's it's like 36 of us in the room. And I'm so glad you could all be here. We're going to move to a discussion on benefits of conference attendance for chairs of virtual committees. And for this, I'm going to suggest that everyone expand their chat box for a discussion. If anyone, I realize Elizabeth, you and I didn't run over this, but do we have a raise hand option for participants in the webinar? So if anyone would like to share via audio, you should have on your toolbar an option to raise your hand. And if you do that, I can call on you and we'll promote you to, we'll give you, can give you the mic so we can just talk. You can also share in the chat box. For those of you who are chairs or have been chairs of virtual committees, your committee doesn't generally meet at conference unless the committee decides that that many of you are there and you want to. We've have expected chairs of virtual committees to attend conference in order to attend the Leadership in ALSC session, to receive updates and network with other chairs, and also to meet with all the chairs in your priority group and with your priority group consultant after the meeting. It's an opportunity for you to connect with other committees at conference that you may need to, for instance, the budget committee or organization and bylaws, who are meeting a lot at conference and and whom you may need to connect with for your committee work, or with other bodies within ALA. Some of you are representatives to roundtables or assemblies within ALA, and we ask you to attend those. As committees are, as virtual committees are well positioned to do a lot of work virtually, we do want to make sure that we are really making the best use of your time when we ask you to attend conference, and just thinking about what is behind that expectation for virtual committee chairs to attend conference. And I wanted to just invite each of you to start sharing benefits that you have perceived as chairs attending conference. You can share whether you are the chair of a virtual committee or not, but I'd be particularly interested in hearing from the chairs of virtual committees of what parts of conference have been most useful to you. Maybe we can just start with that, whether it is something that I've mentioned or something that I haven't mentioned yet. For chairs of virtual committees, what have been the benefits for you for attending a conference? You can start just by adding things in the chat box. You can also raise your hand if you'd like to speak and share with everyone. I'm going to see from Hannah that comment about getting things done so much faster in person, which is absolutely true. It'd be interesting to hear from those of you who are chairs of virtual committees. Have any of you had members at conference and had actually held meetings together at conference? That's a helpful comment from Mary from Distinguished Service Award, just about promoting the work of the committee with members while you're at conference. It'd be interesting to hear if other committees have found the same. I'm going to start to ask some of you more questions. Please continue typing and sharing or thinking and raising your hand. But for some of you who have added questions so far, I hear from a couple of committees that have found it really valuable to promote the work of their committees in person, talking up the Distinguished Service Award or how to do webinars and submit to the Education Committee. And I'm wondering what other means those committees have had to get the word out to membership and if they've been as effective. So what other means of promoting the committee's work have been effective? I'm going to ask a question as you guys continue to share. Seeing a couple of comments here about getting a better grasp of how ALSC works as a division, networking, leadership. And if you have found that benefit in attending conference, can you share a little bit about specifically which meetings or events at conference you find most helpful for that? Or if there are informal networking opportunities that have been helpful too. So when you've left conference feeling like you understand ALSC better, what have been the activities you've participated in that have helped you do that? And as you all continue to share, I'm kind of, my questions are poking in two directions. One, we'd like to give more specific guidance to each of you and to incoming chairs on what you might choose to do at conference that would be beneficial to you and your work and why. And we're also looking for ways that we can make the work that gets done at conference accessible outside of conference so that you have the opportunity to do it throughout the year. So thank you for continuing to share. I'm just looking through your comments. I'm chuckling, Bruce, at your comment, and I've been hitting the wrong key a little bit through this presentation as well. I do think that Bruce is making a joke about at conference, no opportunity to hit the wrong key on the computer and take yourself out of the conversation. Angela talked about the ALSC mixer. I wonder if that might be the ALSC 101 series that the membership meeting hosts on kind of the end of the day on Saturday at annual. But there was also a first time Dutch dinner at midwinter this last conference. I wonder if anybody went to that. And if you do, if you want to share about that, that would be interesting. We're thinking through some of the comments that I'm seeing so far about the benefit of meeting up with people in person. There's one example here of meeting with some specific people that a task force had been trying to connect with. I'm curious to know, for those of you who are making individual connections at conference, does this happen by luck? Does it happen at specific meetings? Some of you have shared that a little bit, that the membership meeting or leadership and ALSC have been helpful for bumping into people. Are any of you using social media to try to connect with individuals or put a call out to connect with people at conference, or using the conference uncommons to have meetings? Has that been productive for anyone? So that's great. You guys are some of you have been using the uncommons. Alexa, it sounds like the Dutch dinner was a great experience. And so hopefully we will do more of those. For those of you who are using the uncommons, how does it suit your needs or not suit your needs? These are all great comments, so please keep them coming. So as you keep your comments coming, I'm going to ask you a couple more prompts, and these are kind of two different ones. But given all these benefits that you've all found in attending a conference, what do you wish that you had known before you went to conference in order to access these? Um, were there meetings you wish you had been told to go to, or tips like sitting down at a table that you're interested in at all committee meeting that you didn't know about? What are the most, what would be the most important tips or guidelines to a new committee chair or new member in attending conference in order to tap into what some of you have tapped into? And of the things that you're mentioning having benefit from at conference, what do you wish you had access to outside of conference as well? And can you imagine doing it in a virtual environment? Scrolling through comments. Rachel, I'm intrigued with this question. Do the chairs of virtual committees ever set up shop somewhere, maybe at all committee meeting or ALSC 101, to let ALSC members, particularly those new to ALSC, about the work they do? And I think there you're alluding to the fact that we have an all committee meeting with these tables spread out for the process committees that are meeting at conference, and we tell members that they can shop around for committees at those tables. But there's no similar opportunity for the virtual committees to shop around. I'm curious to know, for chairs of virtual committees, would you do that at the all committee meeting? For instance, if there was a table that was for virtual committees, chairs specifically for members just to stop by and find out about them. Oh, so we've actually done that. We have done that in the past, but maybe it has not been fully promoted. I'm also hearing from a couple of you who've found benefit in coming to board meetings. And so I'll ask a question that I did in general about conference, about board meetings as well. For those of you who have sat in on a board meeting, what do you wish you had known about sitting in on board meetings before you did so? Or what information would be helpful for somebody joining a board meeting for the first time? There's a question there about the board meetings, and is there a way to know the agenda before attending? The agenda is posted on ALA Connect, and we usually do shoot that out to the electronic discussion lists and try to get it out. We don't always do this, I think, but have tried to get it up on a blog post too. With the agenda, with approximate timing for the items on the agenda. The trick with board meetings is that it's hard to predict the timing on the agenda, and that can kind of slip. But I know that that's a challenge, especially if you're trying to attend for one item on a board meeting and you don't want to spend the whole 4-hour chunk with us, which I understand, it can be a little bit hard to predict what's going on. Just want to take a few more minutes on this topic and encourage you guys to continue to add your thoughts. So I'm going to kind of walk us through some prompts that I've been giving you guys and encourage you to just add some last thoughts. What do you wish you had known about going to conference that would be useful to someone for connecting for some of the benefits that you found? What do you wish you had known about attending board meeting or maybe leadership in ALSC for the first time? What has worked for you at conference outside of the structured meetings for connecting with members? What in general have been benefits for you of coming to conference? And then as you add those, I want to ask you guys to give some last thoughts to what of these benefits that you've been listing: learning how ALSC works, connecting with people one-on-one. Of these, what do you wish you had access to outside of conference that you feel would really benefit your committee work? Can you imagine doing this in an online or offline environment? And I'll add a last question here too, specifically for chairs of virtual committees. What have been the challenges for you of chairing a virtual committee that you think we might be able to improve? And let's take a few minutes for each of you to kind of collect another thought or two and pop it into the chat there. Johanna asked, are these suggestions related only to our experience as members of virtual committees or attendees at conferences? They don't have to be, but the comments in general about the questions I've been asking, I think are relevant here. What I am mining your thoughts for specifically right now is really thinking about how to make your jobs as chairs in general, and especially the chairs of the virtual committees, more effective, and to make sure your time at conference is relevant, and make sure that we prepare everyone and support everyone to be able to make the most of their time. Oh, I hear all of you about the physical setup of the board meeting. And I know our staff probably feel the same. It's important that we hear that and think about it. We often have very limited options where we request a room and set up, and then we're assigned something by conference services. And it's not until we show up and see how the room is set up that we know what the impacts are going to be. So the amount of audience seating and the placement of it is often an issue. But it's important that we're reminded of the impacts of that. Yeah. So as you guys put in your last comments, I'm going to bring this one to a close. Go ahead and get your last comments in there. I'm seeing some comments about Zoom. And have a reminder, I think this came up at a previous meeting. For some of you have institutional access to Zoom, which allows you to use it in the same way ALSC is using it here. For those of you who don't, you can get a free account. The free account limits you to 40 minutes at a time for a meeting. And I heard from one committee that had just tried to do this anyway by having 2 members on the committee set up a meeting for the same meeting, and you would just move from one room to the other, which I thought was a nice thrifty librarian solution. So thank you all for sharing on this. I know the chat transcript for this session is going to be really, really helpful. We'll be looking at and probably bringing back some ideas for you guys later. But on the topic of making best use of everyone's time, I would like to move us along to our next topic, which is going to be another discussion. For this item, this is the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion within ALSC Implementation Task Force. And the co-chairs, Kirby McCurtis and Hannah Leah, are both with us. Elizabeth, can we make Kirby and Hannah presenters now so that they can take the floor? And I'm going to turn it over to them. Okay. There we go. Kirby, I think you're on mute because I can see you moving, but I can't hear you. Give us a few minutes here.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, now we can hear you, Kirby.
Okay, perfect. I'm in the airport, so forgive the background. So Hannah and I wanted to send out a quick survey to get a sense of who's in the room right now and how you identify racially. Ellie, did you send that? She's doing it. Perfect. Okay. And so the reason why we wanted to get this is for Hannah and I and for our committee, our task force, we think it's really important to have really frank and open conversations about race. And I don't think that you can do that if folks don't know sort of like who is who and who is where. And this is probably going to make people feel uncomfortable to have to identify, and that's good. With this work, it's really uncomfortable. And so we want to just like start it out with, okay, this is what we've got. This is what we're looking at. And also to get a sense of the chairs, what the representation is like. So that's what that question is for. And if you have comments about it, we'd love to hear those later. Hannah, do you want to ask the first question?
Sure. So I guess, Nina, can we move forward on the slide?
Yes, there we go.
All right, so the question is written up there, but I'll also read it aloud. How are you currently implementing ALSC's strategic goal area of diversity and inclusion within your committee? And I know that the strategic plan is fairly recent for us, but ideally all of the chairs have been thinking about it, and I know that's on the board report that we wanted to just have a little conversation about what it actually looks like in your committees, because all of our work is a little bit different. We'll give people a chance to type in your answers there, and we'd love to see what you are currently doing. Are people typing? It's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell, yeah.
So I'll share an example right now. So I'm also currently on the grant administration committee, and that strategic goal area is not specifically listed in our rubric as one of, has not, equity, diversity, inclusion are not listed specifically in any of our rubrics currently for grant applications or grant recipients. But I do always bring forward that as one of ALSC's focus areas, so that's in our mind as we look at the applications, even though we can't, it's not a technical or explicit criterion for any of the awards that we're awarding. I always want that to be on people's minds. So that's one way that we're trying to keep it at the top of the things that we're thinking about when we're reading applications.
Got it.
So Caitlin just shared that we're discussing diversity and inclusion briefly during our training for award and notable chairs. That's excellent. We also included the link to Katie Horning's SoundCloud lecture on diversity and award.
On the go. Yeah. Okay. So it's 13 feet, but not, I mean, it's only going to be a band that's what, 3 inches?
How are others thinking about the strategic areas as you're doing your committee work?
Is this something that you're even thinking about or considering? I know it's on the board report, but is this something that you feel like is applying to your committee work? I guess is another way of asking. Like, do you feel like you see a space for it with the committee work that you're doing?
Yeah. Did she didn't send you a picture of what it looks like, right? Yeah, I've got it on.
So I like Mary's comment for new awards that are coming out. That is something that you can specifically talk about and call out and bring into as it looks like maybe a criterion for your award winners.
Have any of you who are in committees that are virtual talked about this in terms of membership and inclusion, and not just sort of like if you're a procedural committee?
I don't want to go more. If I do anything, I want to go less.
Or I guess this is a good time to ask, if you're not implementing any of the goals, what other tools or training do you feel like you need to be able to start implementing the goals for your committee work?
So Sarah made this point. I encourage my committee members to visit ALSC resources on diversity and inclusion. While we're talking about that, if you want to go ahead and share in the comments, what are some of those resources that you've found and which ones you found to be particularly helpful? If there are specific things that you continually point to.
Correct.
Or if you feel like there's something that's missing. We're just trying to get a sense of sort of where everyone is at. Like, our task force is always talking about this, and we're also on other committees, but just sort of wondering if everyone else is doing the same thing, or if there feels like a way that you can't, or you don't know how to have the conversations.
No, I think it's repeating. I think it's pretty key that when she sent to me, she didn't send me a square block picture. She sent me a strip that's like 3 inches wide. That's what she laid down. So I don't know if it comes in a strip or if it's a full sheet. But she showed me a strip between 2 white tiles. So
So there's a question here about do I need to mute? I think we're hearing a background conversation. It might be in the airport, but I think we're just all going to get the audio airport experience for a little while.
So Rachel shared quick list specifically. Oh, where'd it go? Ask our members in each assignment to be mindful of and search out inclusive titles, specifically authors, illustrators, and characters of diverse backgrounds. And we have another comment from Johanna. I think for me, it's important to continue reminding others that librarianship is rooted in ethnocentric, Eurocentric views and values, so unpacking biases is an intentional everyday work. So I see this good question here from Rachel. Do any of the grant/professional award committees include questions about diversity of the candidates on their applications? I'm going to answer to the degree that I can, then maybe I'll pass it over to Nina and maybe Ellie. Like I said, I'm currently the chair of the grant administration committee, and none of our group administers Bookapalooza, the Baker and Taylor Summer Reading Award, Maureen Hayes Author Illustrator Grant, and Penguin Random House Young Readers Group Award. And of those 4, Maureen Hayes does, they want an underserved, as population that doesn't typically get an author illustrator, doesn't typically get to see one. So that's sort of like an underserved population, but none of the award criteria specifically call out any aspect of diversity, inclusion, or equity in the rubric or criteria. So that's good. So Rachel says Bechtel Fellowships does not, and we're RISE. Yes. So this is also a really great opportunity for us to think about. Our committees, typically, we do the work and then we also are charged with making future recommendations for future work. And I think that's something that we can definitely be thinking about in our committees, is what is lacking in our criteria that we should be adding.
I'll jump in for a moment just to add, I think for the most part, if not for all the part, applications within ALA and ALSC have not included any kind of self-identification of race or gender or other diversity, and I think that kind of points to what Johanna was possibly bringing up, that there's this fallacy that if we don't ask, then there's some kind of a fairness or inclusivity going on, when we know that we are not a diverse profession, that we will just continue to generate the same status quo unless we start examining exactly what we're doing. Because of that, I think we're starting to identify which applications we need to start collecting information on. So the volunteer form was just revised this year to include self-identification. Jamie is noted in the chat box that the scholarship for the ALSC Institute has that now, but I think that that's new, and I think that we may start seeing that come up more and more, but it is an opportunity for committees to examine this.
Nina, let's go ahead to the next question. So we would love to continue to hear what each of, ideally we can get like 36 responses on how you're currently implementing the goals, but if you don't have anything to add there, go ahead and jump in here. We really do want to hear from all of you. So if you are implementing the goals, what other tools or training do you need to do this? That is one of the big things that Kirby and I are tackling is what sorts of things can ALSC be providing to you to make you feel, to really be able to push ALSC towards that goal. And then if you're not currently implementing the goals, tell us more about why not. So what are your barriers or issues that you're currently facing?
And Hannah and I have found that there's a lot out there that ALSC has already done. And so we're really trying to be mindful about not duplicating resources. So being really intentional about like, where do people see holes? Or if there's something out there that you don't feel like is working or is outdated, like we're trying to be mindful about, okay, that's something that task force or committees are asking for, and they don't feel like this resource that's already out there is available.
Right. So like Sarah's comment here about Jamie's white paper, if there are specific things that you're using, go ahead and name them because that's helpful for us. And then if there are specific things like, I wish that there were a study on blah, or I don't feel comfortable talking about X, go ahead and tell us because we want to know those things. So there's a great comment.
Thank you for that comment. Yeah, we had talked about that lots. We're trying to figure out the best way to approach that really intentionally and in a meaningful way. So thank you for that comment. Yes.
So the comment says, I think it's hard for some of us to see that being colorblind or gender blind is not being welcoming. I think teaching about equity versus equality is important, and I see a huge need on white fragility when discussing oppression. Sorry for typos, my fingers. We've had typos too. But yeah, definitely thank you for that. And then also if there are other challenges that some of you are facing, or if you, for whatever reason, haven't found a way to implement the strategic areas in your committee, or haven't found the time or the whatever, we want to hear about that. Okay, very good. So there's a comment here from Mary. It was helpful to hear Kathy's mention of asking award committee members to listen to KT Horning's presentation on diversity and sound in awards, which I'm not familiar with. Perhaps that recommendation could be part of the award chair's orientation. Excellent. So one of the things that while you all are typing your comments and thoughts, we can share really quickly. Kirby, if you want to jump in. We are right now focusing on 3 sort of areas between now and annual. The 3 areas are ALSC culture, so finding a way to, okay, so Vicki, I'm going to get you, Vicki, in 1 second.
Finding a way to shift.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay,
so just go ahead.
Go ahead. Kirby, go ahead.
You go ahead, Hannah. Do it.
Okay, so we are trying to find a way to shift ALSC culture for people who are part of marginalized communities already. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out is how to identify people in ALSC who have experiences that they're willing to share and discuss what are some changes that ALSC can make to move forward. And so part of that was coming out of the recommendations from the previous task force working on equity, diversity, and inclusion, where they encourage scholarships for new members, travel awards, conference registration scholarships. So that's one of the pieces. The second piece is looking at training for ALSC members. And so if there's anything here that you all are interested in terms of training, please list it now. And the Early Childhood Programs and Services Committee recently did a survey, and the results were published on the ALSC blog, and diversity and inclusion were one of the big topics that people really want training on. So please do, if that's something that you're hearing or seeing, or something that you personally are experiencing, please do put that in the, type that in your comments. What specifically you'd like to see in terms of diversity and inclusion training. And then finally, the last piece that we're looking at is training for chairs, and that goes to that comment. So maybe we need to do a better job of pulling those resources together. And now I'm going to look for that comment for Vicky.
So the thing about the culture too that I think it's important is while we feel like librarians and librarianship and ALA has a really welcoming culture, it doesn't feel like that for everyone. And so we're trying to sort of get to the heart of like what's missing, where is there a disconnect between some people's experiences and others, especially folks from marginalized communities who are not feeling welcome in these spaces. And in terms of the chair training, that really is stemming from this idea that we have lots of sort of rubrics for discussion, especially like the CCBC guidelines that are just a part of like everybody who is on a chair. I'm on Newberry right now. Everybody knows these. And so we're trying to get to this point where there's sort of a rubric or some thought processes for like thinking about equity and inclusion in that same way, just so that it's a part of every conversation. So that's where we're going. And in terms of the equity training, we just don't want to duplicate any efforts that ALSC has already done. Like Hannah and I have looked, and there's lots of stuff out there. So we're trying to combine forces and sort of be really intentional about no one's ever going to be competent, culturally competent. I think that phrase is bad news, but just sort of how you can keep learning, how you can keep.
Kirby, it seems like your connection is going in and out a little bit. Sorry. I want to add just a point of order here because I'm suddenly realizing why some people aren't seeing some of the comments. A few of you have your chat box set to the wrong setting. So if everyone want to check, make sure when you're chatting, it says to all panelists and attendees. A few of you are chatting just to all panelists, which is just to me, Elizabeth, Kirby, and Hannah, and not to everyone. So if you want to switch that up, and if you had it just set to all panelists, if you shared a comment that you now want to share with everyone, you could reshare it.
All right. To be mindful of everyone's time, I think we're going to have to wrap up soon. But we do really, really, really want to hear from each of you about the work that you're currently doing, and then also the work that you are unsure about, or things that you need help with, or things that you know, I have been told to do this and I don't know how or why, or whatever your barrier is. Please do reach out. Nina, if you can go on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Kirby and I have our contact information here. Please do contact us if you are interested. We actually are finding that a lot of our groups are doing a lot of work on this, and that's wonderful. And also at the same time, we want to be sure that all of our work is tied in together as part of our strategic plan, and that it's purposeful and effective. So if you feel like you're doing something and you're like, hey, let me just tell someone, so that we want to hear about all the stuff, because we want to ensure that it is aligned and it's not duplicative, and that it's effective, and that we can support each other's work. And so please, please, please do be in touch with us, because we want to hear what's going on and support you if we can.
Thank you, Hannah and Kirby. And did you want Elizabeth to share the results of the poll, or is that going to be information for the committee?
Sure.
I'm hoping that it allows me to, oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
So there we go. Pretty much pretty much in line with the profession as a whole, right? But really helpful to see who's in the room, and I want to thank everyone who participated in the poll for sharing for that reason. And thank you, Hannah and Kirby, for leading us in this discussion and inviting more feedback. It will be really, really excited that and hopeful about ALSC doing this work. And thank all of you for participating in this discussion. We just have a few minutes left. I know everyone has places to be, but I just wanted to leave things open for a few minutes for anyone who has a general question or an announcement they want to share from their committee. Feel free to just jump in on the chat. I just lost my chat. Oops. Just give everyone a few minutes of open forum if anyone has a question and announcement. This is great. So Children and Technology is open to guest posts, says Angela Nolet. So please let her know if you're doing something neat with technology. Bruce Farrar from the Intellectual Freedom Committee mentions that they are working on an ALSC blog post on removing books by authors who have been behaving badly and called out publicly for their actions. They have a conference call scheduled for April 25th, and we want to thank the Intellectual Freedom Committee for tackling that topic in a blog post. Any other comments? Any other announcements from committee chairs or questions? Feel free to pop them in the chat box. As we get ready to close, some of you may be typing your last comment. I'll just remind everyone we have the ALSC Community Forum coming up on Thursday. We really hope that you can bring your thoughts there. If you have, I think both of these conversations that we've had today can lend themselves to ideas on how to do ALA differently. That's going to be our topic of discussion on Thursday. So as your thoughts percolate, I encourage you to bring them to our community forum. So thank you for these comments. There's a question about the transcript, and the transcript and recording of this will get posted to the committee resources page. So you'll be able to access it later, and we'll be able to share it with all the chairs, since you see it's just a portion of you here today. All right, and Laura Schulte Cooper is doing a call out to the website advisory committee for the recommendation of moving those committee resources to their own page. So thank you. I saw Patrick and Aaliyah in the room, and hope you can bring those kudos back to your committee. A reminder to everyone that ALSC blog is always open to guest posts. So if you're a committee that doesn't do regular postings, but you would like to do a topical posting on something that's come up for your committee, just reach out to alscblog@gmail.com, and Mary Vors will set you up. And we will work on that on the chat setting too, to make this clearer for everyone next time. So thank you, everybody. Feel free to pop your last comments in there as you leave, because we'll capture them in the transcript, or reach out to me by email following the meeting. But I want to thank everyone for spending an hour in discussion and sharing together. It was really productive. Thank you for doing your work with ALSC, and have a great day. See you all later.